everybody here, a lot of people in this meeting are really familiar with Larcene and really enjoy what she has to say. And I'm so grateful and privileged that you agreed to do this tonight. And so just have fun with it. 30 minutes, an hour, whatever you want to do. And without further ado, Larcene, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Hi, everybody. My name is Larcene. I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon. And I want to thank you for the invitation to be with you tonight. I'm not so sure I want to thank you for the invitation about speaking on emotional sobriety after reading an article that Bill Wilson wrote and put in the Grapevine. I feel woefully inadequate, and for good reason as well. I mean, after you read something like that anyway, it's such a powerful piece. And how can I comment on that? I mean, there's nothing I'm going to add to what Bill Wilson has had to say about that, except that I am really honored that that I even today have just an inkling of understanding about what he's putting out there. Because when I came to Al-Anon, if they had said to me, Larcene, what you're really looking for, what you are really seeking, what you really need is emotional sobriety, my answer would have been, no, it's not even on the top 10 list. I don't want emotional sobriety. I'm perfectly fine. That's not what I thought I needed. And I certainly didn't apply to the Al-Anon. Emotional sobriety is the alcoholic. They're the ones that need everything. They're the ones with the problem. What I was seeking when I got here was I was seeking acknowledgement. I was seeking acknowledgement for all I'd been through, all my suffering, all I'd given up, the sacrifices I had made. That's what I thought was going to happen here, because again, when you walk in, from my perspective into Al-Anon, it was all about what they did to me. That's all I ever looked at. That's all I could ever focus on. I grew up in a house with an alcoholic dad, and it seems in the family that I grew up in, there was never a solution. It was always about what the problem was. The focus was always on the problem. And the focus on that is who started it, whose fault it is, just all of that negativity, and never a solution. So I certainly didn't come in here solution focused, and certainly not looking for any kind of emotional sobriety. I came in here because I was right, and I wanted somebody to tell me that I was right. Not that now that I look back, of course, did I think that that was going to make anything easier or better or whatever. And I don't know why I felt this great compulsion, for you just to tell me. But part of it, I think too, and doing a lot of inventory work is, growing up in an alcoholic home and just in alcoholism in general, it's like a lot of crazy stuff goes on. And, but it's like people are telling you, no, that's not what's happening. It's just like the house that I grew up in. My dad was a very angry person, very violent person. But it was like, but that's not happening here. You're over exaggerating this, you deserved it. You got what you deserved. You're lucky that I didn't, do more to you, and it's just all of that stuff that's going on. My husband's alcoholism, his denial of, his behaviors and things that would happen. My favorite thing he would do, well, now it's my favorite thing, that back then it wasn't, was like he would lose his truck, which I always thought was like, how do you lose a truck? Something that weighs thousands of pounds and you don't know where it is. And this is what I would say to him, because he would come home and he would be home, but there'd be no vehicle. And I would say to my alcoholic husband, where is your truck? And you know what an alcoholic says back to you when you ask him where his truck is? He says, what truck? Like he never had one in the first place. And this is where everything is crazy. And then you start to wonder, well, did he have a truck? And then the next thing he says, well, what did you do with my truck? Like I had something to do with what's going on with this truck. And this is the insanity that when you live with it day in and day out, and you start to question, you just do. I remember one time, Butch, big fight, I'm leaving you, I'm out of here. And he's like, no, I promise I'm not going to drink anymore. We're going to go out to dinner. We're going to talk about it. It's all going to be good. We get a babysitter, we go out to dinner. And the first thing my husband does is he orders a carafe of wine. And I say to him, I thought you said you weren't going to drink anymore. And he looks at me as sincere as anybody can be. And he says, this is wine. Like wine doesn't count as alcohol. And I mean, he is so convincing that I'm even questioning, is wine alcohol? and I'm just saying all of these things that just kind of build up in there, you just want someone to say, yeah, that was crazy, that was nuts, but I think I want someone to tell me that I'm right, instead of just acknowledging the truth, and again, where emotional sobriety, I don't even know that I need this, but I can't even recognize my own insanity, behind all this thinking that I would even question whether wine is alcohol or not. That never became an issue for me. The problem was that that's what he said to me. So therefore his problem, his craziness, nothing wrong with me. And, and this whole idea of, coming into Al-Anon and starting to take a look at me and my behavior, was so foreign to me. Yet when I did come into Al-Anon, it's because I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was so sick and tired of being angry all the time. I came into Al-Anon after my husband was almost 2 years sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And what was happening to me is that, you see, I always thought when my husband was sober that would fix me, and one more time. And I think, Bill talks about this, it's just our expectations of what our rewards are going to be. I put up with him and all of his drinking, and now he's sober, and, and now I'm going to be happy. I'm going to get everything I want, how I want it, because I'm thinking that this sobriety is what's going to fix me. Because I thought when he was sober, he would be a good husband. And guess what he was? And I thought when he was sober, he'd be a good dad. And guess what he was? And I thought he would be a good provider, and he became a great provider, and he was a great sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And that was all good for him. And for a little while, it was fun for me. But then, I can't ride on his coattails, his sobriety that's going to bring that, because what ended up happening for me is it's like my friend Crazy Jean says, it's like they get sober and you're out of a job, because I just didn't know how to turn it off. I didn't know how to turn off the anger. I didn't know how to turn off the craziness, because when you've lived your whole life, on red alert, and now all of a sudden you don't have to do that anymore. It's, I had no 12 steps. I had no program. I had nothing to work on myself. I was just trying to emulate what he was doing. But then, as he's getting well in the program, and speaking of myself, and I am as sick as I am, boy, I want nothing to do with wellness, how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism. Because when I would lose my temper and get all angry, which I did on a daily basis, this is what your sober husband now says to you. Easy does it. Let go and let God. One day at a time. I mean, I'd be in the kitchen cooking, and I wanted to take my wooden spoon and stab it right through his sober heart, because you go from being the good guy to now having someone, and I knew the things that he was saying was loving, kind, but I had no idea, it's just like, oh, what I interpreted that is, you're sober, so now you're better than me. Again, the craziness, because when did it become a competition of who's the good person in the family? When does doing the right thing become a competition? But when you're affected by the disease of alcoholism, like I was, everything is a competition. It's really, really important that I look good, and so when I read this essay and I see these, Bill talking about, that type of thing, about how you want to, get the reward of the recognition. And who did I even want the recognition from? I can't even tell you that I knew. Again, how I'm affected by the disease of alcoholism, and I am totally oblivious to it. So when I came into Al-Anon, I just really did come because I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand why I wasn't happy, because I really hung my happiness on my husband's behavior. And when his behavior and, in his sobriety was beyond any expectations I had, of which I am so, so grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous. I mean, I can't even tell you my gratitude to Alcoholics Anonymous for the life it's given my husband. It's, beyond anything I ever dreamed of. And I think I get emotional about it, because again, one more time, this is what to me emotional sobriety is because I get to watch my husband thrive and be a happy human being, be a contributing citizen. And it's not because of me. It's because of the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous, which he put into motion. And not only did he put into motion into his own life, because when he put that into motion into his own life, he touched our whole family. how grateful I am that when he went to Alcoholics Anonymous, they just weren't about, hey, dude, this is how we do it in AA, and this is what we do in AA, and all we care about is alcoholics. He came into Alcoholics Anonymous, and his sponsors and the people that, were his guides in the program told him, make sure you take this stuff home. That's why when I would lose my temper and get angry, he would say stuff to me like, easy does it, let go and let God. He never once told me what to do. I mean, in the sense that, why are you losing your temper? You're, overreacting. It was never any of that. He was just trying to apply the things that he was told to do when those things happened to him in his quest for emotional sobriety, to try and show me what he would do. But of course, I don't recognize it as that. And so when I came to Al-Anon, that was the deal for me. It was just like, I just couldn't understand, and right away, how grateful I am. And I am grateful that I came in, back in the day. And and I'm sure everybody's grateful for the time that they came in, as you should be. But of course, I think the year that I came in was the best year in the universe to come to, because even though I need no recognition, I still need recognition that my year is the best. Am I ever going to get over that? I don't know. But again, it's just my gratitude. And I'm so grateful for the sponsorship that I received. I'm so grateful that I came into a program where, it's about you. It is strictly about you. And there was a lady that used to come, and she was a longtime Al-Anon member when I came in. Her name was Martha Parsons, and she had 40 something years, I think, when I walked in the door. I mean, she came into Al-Anon, I think, in 1955. And I think her husband got sober for a very, very brief period, maybe 6 months. And then he never, ever achieved sobriety again. And he was also a gambler too. So all kinds of problems. But Martha was one of those very first examples to me, because boy, she would be at the meeting and, and you would never know that she had a drinking husband. I mean, she was just this, joyful, grateful. I mean, it was just, and my knowing her background, I mean, that to me, was just the example of, and I asked her one time, how can you be so happy, when you still have a husband that's at home drinking? And she says, because in Al-Anon, I learned that I have choices and I get to take responsibility for those choices. And she says, when my husband first, when he started back drinking again, she says, I hung out for another 6 months. And then I decided I didn't want to be with him when he was drinking. So I left him. And she says, and I left for 6 months. And she says, during that 6 months, I was miserable, because what I discovered is that I love my husband very much. And I'd much rather be with him drinking than not be with him at all. And Al-Anon told me that when I made that decision for myself, that was a choice I was making. And what I've learned in this program is that when I acknowledge that this is my choice, then I take responsibility for the decisions that I make. And I have this opportunity to be happy, joyous, and free, because it's a choice that I made. It's my decision, and I'm good with it. And she was just a hoot anyway. She'd tell me, when I first came to Al-Anon, she said, what I asked him? I asked him how to get that look off my face, because I didn't know how to get that look off my face. And boy, did I identify with that, because I'm a person, I can act like, oh, it's not bothering me or whatever, but I got a look. I have a look that just, slices the legs right off from underneath you. And the first time that I laughed in an Al-Anon meeting was when she shared something. And when she shared something that was really funny, and I laughed, and it was the first time that I laughed from inside. It had been so foreign to me to hear my own laughter that when I laughed out loud at a meeting, I remember actually looking over my shoulder to see who that was. That's how foreign that sound was to me. And that's the beginning of the journey for that. That was that first little indication, about, it's not about them. It's about me. It's about just accepting what's going on in my life to the best of my ability and moving forward. And that's still, of course, super, it's so easy to say, and when Bill writes this, this article that he wrote in the Grapevine, every day I read every paragraph and I identify with what he's saying and I understand it logically. But the part I like about it the most is he says, I think that many oldsters who have put AA, booze cure and all that, talking about being old. Sometimes I think being a long time in the program, that gets to be an issue for me as well, because what's happened being a long time in the program is I know a lot of stuff. I've read a lot of stuff. I've been to a lot of meetings. I know what I'm supposed to do. I have no doubt about what I'm supposed to do. but actually putting that into practice, isn't that the ticket? Like he said, you know, the, whatever he calls it, the, oh, I'm lost the word here, but anyway, I'll find it later on. But the spiritual calculus, whatever that part is, I know what I am supposed to be doing, but I don't always put it into practice. And so whenever I am struggling, I always like to, I go through like the Courage to Change or the ODAT. And just a few short weeks ago, I was having a difficult time with a lot of things that were going on, and I couldn't figure out why, like he says, you know, why aren't the 12 steps working for this? And then I read this one line, it's in December 22nd in the Courage to Change, and it's under today's reminder. And it said, "It is good to know about the tools of the Al-Anon program, but it is better to put them to use." Doing, you know, again, one more time, it's how easy it is sometimes because I know, but then in actually putting these things, you know, into practice is what the deal is. And, you know, and another thing that's happened for me too is, you know, I've been so well guided, not just by people in Al-Anon, by many, many people in Alcoholics Anonymous. I have learned so much reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 12 and 12, my friends in Alcoholics Anonymous, going to open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, my gratitude to AA, how it's opened my eyes to the possibility as a family member. You know, again, how grateful I am, you know, that, you know, I've always felt so welcome in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't like to go to AA meetings when my husband first got sober. I don't know why, but I was freaked out that she would think I was an alcoholic if I was in an AA meeting. I don't know why that did. Again, I don't know, you know, and I would say to my husband, how are they going to know I'm not an alcoholic? And he would go, don't worry, they'll know. Like that was, you know, I thought it was a compliment. It was not. You know, apparently you guys can tell, you know, the wackadoodle family members that are present there. And for that, I am grateful. But I want you to know, I have always, always been made to feel welcome at Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And I am so, so grateful for that. Because that's when you guys stop becoming the enemy for me. You know, again, going to AA meetings and hearing your stories. I always tell people, you know, I don't know how many, I've probably been to thousands of open meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have never, ever yet heard one AA get up to a podium and say that he drank because he wanted to hurt his family, because he wanted to destroy his family. Never heard it one time. And I know that that's the absolute positive truth. But how I am affected by the disease of alcoholism is it sure looks like that. It sure feels like that. And one more time, why I blame the alcoholics for all the chaos in my life and the confusion in my life, instead of looking at what Martha taught me. You know what? You got to look at the choices that you're making. And when I freely make these choices, my life definitely gets better, and it gets better, and it gets better, and it gets better. But again, I don't, you know, and as much as I try and apply these principles to my life, you know, it's always fun and dandy when everything's going the way you want it to go, you know, and sometimes it just does. Boy, sometimes I have such insanely wonderful days, you know, early days that I had in Al-Anon, all the participation, you know, I mean, because again, my group was very active. We did all kinds of things. We went all kinds of places. We had so much fun. It was just a grand ride. I wouldn't miss a meeting if my life depended on it. I mean, it was such a great ride, you know, and then as long as that was going on, you know, again, I'm always that way, Alan, it's working, it's great. I'm happy, you know, but then the minute you start hitting the bump in the road, and even today when I hit in the bump in the road, my first reaction is, it's not working, Al-Anon's not working. And again, I have the knowledge, but am I actually putting the principles into action? And, you know, and a story I always like to share is about when my grandson was born. And I'm in Al-Anon at 20 years at this point, you know, and very active in service. And I find out I'm going to be a grandmother. I'm very excited about this. I've never been a grandmother before. And so I decide instantaneously when I find out about this pregnancy that I'm going to be there when the baby's born. I mean, that's just, I have to be there when the baby's born. I mean, this is, and again, old behavior, because you know what, I don't always feel so good about what a great mom I was, but I'm going to feel really good about being the world's greatest grandma in the universe, you know. And again, one more time, that, need, and what I'm doing here, I know now today is compensating for that. Well, because I have this guilt about, the things when my children were little that I did when their dad was drinking and I was the sober parent. I remember everything, every nasty yelling, screaming, hitting. I mean, blah, and I can write inventory on all of that and stuff. And again, one more time, there's a lot of forgiveness and that's a whole nother talk. But, and again, one more time, what I do now is I don't feel guilty anymore, but I still regret. Some of the things that I did. And so I'm going to make this up in the grandma department, when I decide I'm going to be there when the baby's going to be born. And, and as it turns out, I have a lot of commitments that weekend and, and it's like 7 months away. And my husband says, well, if you're going to be here when the baby's born, you might want to get out of those commitments. And I'm here to tell you, when you're the Al-Anon and then your alcoholic husband is the voice of reason in your home, you're in deep doo-doo. Okay. You just are. And, but I pretty much blew past that. And I just said, no, I'm not getting out of those commitments. Those are Al-Anon commitments. I am keeping my commitments. And then my husband says, well, then you'll have to face the choice, that you're keeping those commitments and, you might not be here when the baby's born. And I'm big on that. It's one of those things I learned from, these are the choices I'm making. I will take responsibility for that. And I'm big on that because nothing's happened to make that, I know it's all going to work out. And then my husband suggested I might want to talk to my sponsor. And nothing's worse than when your spouse tells you to go talk to your sponsor. You might as well just go pound sand, okay? Because it's just not going to happen. And I know better than to talk to my sponsor anyway, because as you guys all well know, sponsors are plan busters, okay? It's just what they do. And so instead of going to my sponsor, I went to God. And again, for me, finding peace, it's always going to ask God to help me. I mean, that's just what I have learned over the course of time. And I went from somebody who didn't believe in God at all to now like God, now I'm God's special agent, and I give God assignments, just because I want things, the way I want them. And I think it's just for the betterment of everybody involved. And again, all the ways I will talk and reason myself into, what Bill talks about, this reward system that I want to have happen, this will be good and everybody looks good. So God, why don't you do it? And so I just asked God for this baby just not to be born on the weekend, and I told God, I know I'm not supposed to ask for specifics, but I don't think asking for a baby not to be born on the weekend is like asking for a car or a job. I just don't. It's a different deal here. My first time being a grandma, I am doing Al-Anon commitments, service work, your service, that you want me to be doing, and this is the whole conversation I have with my higher power. Because I'm still a believer that God would much rather hear honest prayer than some bull cocky thing I'm making up about this stuff or whatever. So I'm honest in my prayer. And I remember closing my eyes in prayer as I do in meditation. And I saw God's head affirmative that, the baby would not be born on the weekend. Well, this weekend comes, and I call my daughter-in-law before I leave. This is Friday morning. Nothing's going on. She's not due for another week or something anyway. And so I leave and I go to this place in freaking like Minnesota. And I mean, there's like a little tiny town. One airplane comes in there every day. One plane leaves every day. And I'm at this dinner and my cell phone rings and the baby has been born. And I am so pissed. I am so angry. I can't even begin to tell you how angry I am. And again, one more time, Al-Anon doesn't work. This sucks, but I don't never say these to these people I'm with. Instead, I excuse myself. I go outside and I call my sponsor and I start yelling and screaming at her. This is horrible. I ask God for one little weeny baby not to be born on the weekend. Do I get it? No, I don't. It's just like, and here I am doing a service. I said the prayers. I did everything I was supposed to do. And, and I am so angry and I'll never forget. My sponsor says to me, I'll have to call you back. Oh, thank you. Thanks for being there for me when I'm really up, up the creek without a paddle. And what ended up happening was about, 2 minutes later, my cell phone rings again. And what happened was it was my sponsor's sponsor. Now, I don't know how it is where you live, but where I live, when your sponsor calls you, you have crossed the line. Okay. You are, they're bringing in the big guns to reel you back in. And, and what I know today and what my sponsor told me was because, I had called her so upset, yelling, screaming, I'm going to quit Al-Anon. Blah, blah, blah. I had just freaked her out so much. She didn't know what to do. So she had to hang up so she could call her sponsor. That's what I did. And so it was her sponsor on the phone. And I knew better than to yell at her sponsor. So I went the other way. I started crying. This baby, and I don't get to be there. It's not fair. It's my first time being a grandma, and doing all this other stuff. And I will never forget her voice on the other end, because I'm in wackadoodle. Okay. I'm calling my husband. Nobody touch that baby. Nobody look at that baby, because this is just what I do. And I get really super angry, because as much as I know that Bill wrote this for somebody with depression, anger is my thing. And I always say anger is my thing, but I want to tell you what the real deal is for me. It's not so much that anger is my deal. It's that hurt. I get hurt. And I would much rather you see me angry than you see me hurt. And I don't know what great character defect that comes from, but I know what I'm dealing with when I'm dealing with my anger. And I just really wanted to be there when that baby was born. And instead now, and then Charlotte was then Carol's sponsor. And I remember her talking to me, again, and what we do for each other, what she did for me that day, what Bill is talking about, working with someone else. I don't know what Charlotte was doing that day. I just know that Carol called her, told her I was wackadoodle, and that I really needed help. And could she please call me, because she didn't know what to do with me. And that woman stopped whatever it was that she was doing so that she could call me and reassure me. And what she said to me is, you know what, Larcene, a beautiful, wonderful thing happened today. And just because it didn't happen the way that you wanted it to happen, you became a grandmother. Just because it didn't happen how you wanted it to happen, you're going to take this beautiful event that happened, this birth of your very first grandchild, and turn it into a piece of crap because you made up some ridiculous rule in your head that you had to be there when that baby was born. And one more time, you want to talk about emotional sobriety. It was just hit me right square in the face. I was going to take a beautiful moment and turn it into a horrible event because it didn't go down the way that I wanted it to. One more time, my selfish need for however I wanted that to look. So I look like a great grandma and I'm there when the baby's born, and all of that garbage, and I ended up that conversation with Charlotte like I always do with my sponsor or my sponsor, and that's never mind, because I know I've been coming a long time. That's what again, what he talks about, the old timer thing. I know a lot of stuff, but I'm not always able to put it into practical application unless I bring it to you, and then vice versa, the same way that I'm able to help other people. And, when they call me, there was a lady that I sponsored for a very long time. She was living with active alcoholism. Her husband got sober, but then he didn't maintain sobriety. He was a chronic slipper, but a wonderful guy who I loved very much. And she finally ended up divorcing him. And when she came to me and we were discussing her options and the choices that she was going to get to make, because I don't make that choice for anyone else. What we do, talk to each other, reason things out with someone else. That's what we get to do. When I was going through that process with her, and she told me, he can get sober tomorrow and stay sober for the rest of his life. I'm just done. I don't love him anymore. And that's what alcoholism does sometimes. It literally does destroy families and it can take away the love. It's just what the disease does when it goes on unchecked. And then a little while after that, she'd gotten married very young, had all these kids and all this stuff. She got crazy. I mean, she was just like dating all these people all over the place. It was nuts. Then she ended up dating her ex-husband's brother, who was in prison. And this was a wild ride for me. And I was constantly calling my sponsor about how I'm supposed to do all of this with her. And it was a difficult process for me. But anyway, she ended up dropping out of Al-Anon because she was going to do what she was going to do, how she was going to do it. She didn't want the principles of the program interfering with this wonderful life that she thought she was going to have. And then a few years later, she ended up coming back to Al-Anon. And what she told people was, you know what? I was able to come back because Larcene didn't judge me while all that was going on. And I'm glad she, you know, and I'm glad she felt that way. And I'm glad I was able to convey that to her. But the heck, I wasn't judging her. I thought she was a lunatic. I mean, how can you possibly go out with your ex-husband's brother who's in prison? You know, that was crazy for me. But again, the principles that we learn here, you know, and it's not about let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. You know, though that's being a grown-up to me. That's what's being, people got to live their life. They get to do what they get to do, how they get to do it. And God puts me in their life as he puts you into my life, just to be there to show us how to go. You know, whether or not we go there or not doesn't make me love you any more or any less. Taking a group conscience, you can vote the complete opposite of what I think of the group conscience. It's the beauty of it. That's to me where the, you know, the emotional part of the emotional sobriety comes in, is that I can allow you to vote because I believe that you are voting your conscience just as I am, as God expresses himself through that. And whether it goes your way or my way is so irrelevant. You know, what matters is that I trust you that you're going to vote your conscience just like I'm going to vote mine. You know, and when I do that, I am able to, you know, have the shot at a good life, because that's all Al-Anon gives me, is the shot at a good life. You know, I had this really, again, when life is going good, it's going good. And when it's going bad, it's going bad. And, you know, and when my son started doing drugs and alcohol, super, super difficult time for me. Absolutely insane. I mean, I was working this program as hard. I mean, just everything I could possibly think to do, you know, to not let, you know, his drug use and his alcohol use. And he was young. I mean, he started at 12 years old. And, it, you know, and still being the parent of someone who's going through all of that, where I still have so much responsibility and obligation as a parent. Where do I separate what I'm supposed to do and how I am supposed to do it? And again, the love and guidance that I got from so many people on my own, I never would have made it through that. I absolutely, positively never would have made it through that. And then there were times when I would go through it gracefully, and then times when I wouldn't. I used to ask my sponsor, how am I supposed to be happy, joyous, and free when I have a child that might die from this disease? And my sponsor would say to me, because Larcene, if you're not happy, joyous, and free, you show that kid no hope. And I mean, and that's my responsibility without a doubt. You know, and then it was, how do I love him? How do I love him when he's stealing money from us, when he's doing, you know, unprincipled things and things that he hasn't been taught to do, as drug addicts and alcoholics will when they're in the depth of their disease, you know. And then she turned me on to what unconditional love. You know, when I think about emotional sobriety, boy, that's one of the first things that comes to my mind, because she made me look up unconditional. And you know what it says? No conditions. That's the definition of unconditional love. You know, and what Bill talks about, like with Francis, you know, that's what it is. It's just, I love you who you are. I accept you for who you are. You are exactly who you are supposed to be, doing exactly what you are supposed to be doing. But unacceptable behavior is unacceptable behavior. And if you can't be trusted in my house, if you're going to steal from me, then I get to make the choices that I need to make from that point on. And emotional sobriety also means that sometimes the choices I make are not feel-good decisions. Not every choice I make makes me feel good. It still may be the right one, but it gave me no pleasure to ask my son to leave our house, even though it was the right thing to do. But again, for my emotional sobriety, what I had to do to be able to take care of myself in this situation, because it was too painful for me to have it under my nose in my own house. I couldn't do it. And then my husband said, you know, we have a sober house here and we have a right to that. You know, but I still got to love my son unconditionally, which meant when he came home, we expected him to be sober. And that meant when he came, he might be, you know, but he knew he couldn't come in unless he was. So at Christmas time, there were Christmases when he did come and he stayed most of the day. There was one Christmas when he didn't even make it 10 minutes. And that's really, really hard. That's really, really difficult, especially when he's there for that 10 minutes and you see that look, that just hollow look. And this person who's your child, I mean, it's just absolutely insane. And that's the stuff. But he would leave and I would get down on my knees and I would just ask God to help me to love him unconditionally, because he was perfect just the way he was. And that's the hardest part, I think, you know, especially when you're having to deal with the kid that's doing that. And how grateful I am. That son ended up getting sober when he was 36 years old. Not my time scale at all. You know, he'd been going to AA since his dad got sober when he was 3 years old. I mean, I'm like, I told him, how could you not, you've been going to AA since you're 3. And he goes, you know what I learned in AA, Mom? I learned how not to get caught. That's what I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, because they hear what they want to hear. Again, it's not my gift to give. It's their gift to receive, and watching someone get well in the program, AA or Al-Anon, whether it's my son or it's your son, I can't tell you what brings me as much joy, because again, what Bill Wilson talks about in that emotional sobriety is it's unexplainable to me. It is still to this day unexplainable to me why I get my heart is so full, even if my own life is falling apart. To go to a meeting, an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting, and to see people that were just be reborn, to have this absolutely magnificent shot at a good life, and to be so grateful for it. You know, I have a great friend in AA, Bob Fisher, and he always says that people quit coming to Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon because they quit being amazed. And I take that to heart, boy. Every day I find something to be amazed about. And if I'm acting like a grown-up that day, that's always amazing to me, always amazing. But if I'm not amazing myself, then I'm on a Zoom meeting and you're amazing me, because that's what gets to happen here. And when I think about emotional sobriety too, and where that's supposed to come from, again, one more time, it's all Lois wrote something, and I jotted it down because it's in the book Lois remembers, and it's practically the last page. And she says, I used to believe thinking was the highest function of human beings. I now realize loving is our supreme function. The heart precedes the mind. Our minds demand an explanation, but our hearts do not need logic. They can love and forgive and accept that which minds cannot comprehend. Hearts understand in ways minds never can. And that's exactly what, when we talk about, let there be no gossip or criticism of one another. My mind wants to gossip and criticism all the time. But in my heart, I want you to be successful here. And the best way I know for you to be successful, as I have been, because I want you to have what I have. And again, that's a God shot, because that's not my normal operandi whatsoever. But I want you to have what I have, because when you get what I have, then it makes what I have 10 times better. And again, I cannot explain it. There's a passage in the book, As We Understood, that little Al-Anon spiritual book, and it says, I'm developing an understanding of God I don't fully understand. And I am grateful for that understanding today. During this whole, holiday time that we're going through or whatever, it's the time, of peace on earth, goodwill toward men. And I think that we have that in the programs of Alcoholics and Al-Anon all the time. When we're able to practice this emotional sobriety, it's what we want for each other. And we have that every single day. And I am really, really grateful for that. I wish you guys peace. I wish you goodwill, and I wish you emotional sobriety. And I know you'll find it here. So with that, I will stop my share. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. What a great share. We thank you for participating with us tonight. So we usually will read or we'll raise our hands in the participant box. The way we usually kick this off, Larcene, do you see some people on here? You see all these little boxes, the little Hollywood squares we got going on? You want to pick somebody to share to kick it off? Because nobody ever wants to follow anybody after this or this reading. They just want to chill. So you got to aggravate them and call on them.
Oh, I do, huh? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let me. I see Mary Thayer. Absolutely. I want to call on Mary.
Hi, Larcene. It was just wonderful to hear you. I guess so much you talk so fast, I'm trying to bring it all in. But the idea that this is really a heart program has become more and more clear to me, especially with this Zoom stuff. It's like I'm amazed. The other day I was driving down, going to shop, and the phone rang, and I was in my vehicle, and I answered it. I usually don't, but I did. And it was somebody from the Netherlands, for crying out loud, asking a question. She got my number from somebody, and it was fascinating to me to hear people reaching out at this time, and it really is amazing. I can't agree with you more about the fact the longer I'm around, the more I have to apply this versus know what's actually going on. And some of you people have said it before, but when this pandemic did start, I realized I've never gone through a pandemic in my life, let alone in my recovery. What values and principles am I supposed to be living by? And so I took living in a pandemic, and lots of fears, and my fears always trigger my defects in my character, which make me very crazy, out of line, reactive, not at all responsive. And so I'm grateful that I did some. It's like we all have the same 12 steps. We have many fellowships, but we all have the same 12 steps. And they're like a kit of spiritual tools, and they are spiritual tools. And to sharpen them during this time has been kind of what I've been up to. I've been playing with them. I'm not afraid of the 4th step anymore. It does give me some idea. It is a tool. It's not a weapon. I used to think it was a weapon, but it isn't. It's where I get to really see what Mary There's been up to, because I'm still the fish I got to catch. I wonder what happened that I reacted like that. And more is being revealed. And I love our book where it says God is constant. That doesn't mean once every 10 years. They'll give me a little blip, but I have to kind of prepare myself to hear. And I love the program just as much as you do. I have experienced being kind of a double winner. My biggest gift coming into Al-Anon was when I realized that I couldn't stand the story I was telling anymore about them, and I just didn't want to feel the way I was feeling. And I realized my reaction to the situation was killing me. And that's when Al-Anon kicked in, the way I look at my steps today. I think I need this program more and more as the days go on. I've had kind of an interesting week. I've been pondering, which could be difficult, or maybe that's good, maybe it isn't, but I've just been kind of taking a look at how excited I am to just live the day. Now that probably sounds a little dopey, but I'm so thrilled when the sun goes down every night. It's like, God, I made another day. And it's like in the morning, this morning, just little things now become so heartfelt. They open my heart. I live right on Tampa Bay, and I was watching about 5 or 6 dolphins jump in and everything this morning. I was just sitting here watching them. And then I opened Facebook, and 2 years ago, I slammed up a picture about dolphins. They might have been the same dolphins for all I know. But I mean, and I think to myself, well, this is dopey. It's like me with the beaks, right, Tom? I love nature right now. Nature, and I think I've slowed down enough to feel that. And makes my heart very happy. It really does. I don't know about my emotional sobriety. I guess, who knows? I live alone. The cats still like me, so that's good. But I really feel contented, and at the same time, I feel awake. Maybe that's it. Maybe this whole thing has just made me more awake, more present to really want to hear what you have to say and to share. And I miss you. I miss seeing people and hearing people. And at the same time, couldn't be happier with the Zoom thing. So thanks for calling me. Have a blessed holiday.
So good. Thank you. So good to hear from you. And we have Linda Rocco with her hand up. Linda?
Hello, Rafa, but thank you. Hi, I'm in Philadelphia, and my sponsor encouraged me to come to this meeting. I thought she'd be on here, but that doesn't really matter. So I have about 33 years sober, but it's taken me a really long time to get to the emotional sobriety part. And Larcene, everything you had to say, I laughed a lot. Too bad I was on mute. I would like to have shared that laughter with you, but I really enjoyed that. I understood what you were talking about. I'm older. I'm 67 years old, and I'm finally at the point where I realized that my choices are my choices. Nobody was doing anything to me. They were all crazy like everybody else, you know. And I have lost out on a lot of loving in life because of a lot of that, you know, a lot of fear, a lot of misconceptions. And I just got finished a 5th step, and it felt really like I'm going in a different direction. I'm going to a different place. And I even feel like I like myself better. And I feel like there are so many possibilities now. I did go to Al-Anon, and I always say my last name when I raise my hand. And I didn't go back because the chairperson said, we only use our first names around here. And I said, well, I don't do that. I use my last name. I was taught to do that. So, and I also said that if I go to any more damn meetings or therapists, I won't have time to do my laundry. But I am in a different place. It's exciting, and I need to drop the feeling of, you know, well, now I'm older and blah, blah, blah. But I need a program. I need a program every day. I need a meeting. I need to hear what people have to say. And I am so glad that I came to this meeting tonight. You helped me a lot. Thanks.
Thank you. We don't have anybody raising their hand. So what about Juanita? I haven't heard from Juanita in a while.
There. Hi. Thanks, Larcene. Really appreciate your taking the time to be on tonight. You know, this has gotten to be one of my favorite go-to meetings. My first sponsor, when she laid out her requirements for sponsorship, she said, you'll go to 3 meetings of Al-Anon every week, and you'll also go to at least 1 open AA meeting. I think it was like every, you know, twice a month or something like that. And I mean, I was already doing that because I was, you know, going to keep track of what he was doing, right? Got to see who he's playing with and what he's up to, you know? So I would show up at meetings. So I was like, okay, whatever, you know, I got no problem doing that. And today I do it because there's meetings that I really like that are of real benefit. And I have the opportunity to hear some incredible wisdom, and it enables my growth, my spiritual growth. And I'm really grateful for that. And you know, this is one of them. So I'm really glad that Sam, you opened up, you know, this little meeting that you had, and which I used to laugh at Tom, you know, Tom, I'm going to go to Sam's meeting. I'm like, okay, you know, whatever. And I'd roll my eyes, you know, and today I'm not rolling my eyes. So that's a little emotional growth, you know. One of the things that you said, Larcene, that really struck home with me was where you said, you know, the anger, because I really relate with that. You know, it's like I get sad, I get fearful, and the anger is the first thing that comes up. You know, I don't like sadness, and I don't like the feelings of fear. And so anger is a much safer one. It gives me this illusion of power. This gives me this illusion of control. And I mean, it's just my go-to feeling. And I guess I have some emotional growth because it's not something that I do the way I used to. I can go there, or I can be right on the edge, and there'll just be like this little key that gets turned somewhere within me, that just like, it's like stopped, and it's like, wait a minute, really? You don't have to do this. There's no reason for it. And it's just like, and all of a sudden, it's like there's this little crack in me that lets me be sad, that lets me be scared. And in that moment, I get to call on God and the power of God and invite God in, and isn't that what it says in the 10 step? We watch for fear, for, and, one of the things I have to watch for is the sadness, because boy, the family disease of alcoholism is a disease that keeps on giving, and like you talked about your son, it's like we've got our kids, we got our grandkids, and, it's like you never know what's going to happen. And I really need God more than I've ever needed God these days, because there are some alcoholics that I absolutely love. And I mean, right now everybody seems to be doing fine, but who knows? It's like, I'd be the last one to know. And that's probably okay too. I don't need to know. That's growth, because there was a time when I needed to know. Boy, everything in me had to know, and I don't have that need today. And I really appreciate, hearing you, Larcene. I just love you. I think the world of you. And please give a big hug and a big hi to that big guy of yours, huh? Say hi to Butch. Okay, thanks. Love you.
Thank you. And what about, nobody's raised their hand? So then I'm just going to call on, what about John H? John H comes to our meeting sometimes. Hadn't heard from John H in a while. John Hinman, you want to share? We'll give him a second to get prepared.
Who, me?
Yeah, man. What's going on?
I like being silent. Hi, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic. And I'm really grateful to be here today. And it was funny because I was thinking about raising my hand, because so many emotional sobriety, and especially in this year since COVID, and when right before COVID started, I thought I was going to go bankrupt and close and have to get a job. And it happened, and restaurants closed, and I got sad for a week, but I was able to mobilize and help the restaurant community here. Anyways, all this crazy stuff has happened up until Thanksgiving, and I've just put my head down. And I woke up the day after Thanksgiving. I'm a baker. And so I put my head down and I set this subconscious, what's the word I'm looking for? Agenda, that I didn't know I had. And it was all to make it to Thanksgiving, the Super Bowl of pie, right? And I went out and changed my business and changed the name and got new branding. And my nonprofit went crazy to help restaurant people. And the day after Thanksgiving, I woke up and I'm like, what the hell just happened? I fired my sponsor in that time. I have long hair. I have a girlfriend. I changed a business. I did this. And it's all because of the grace of God, I think, And I haven't been the best AA member through all this, like I was in the past, but, and then I've been looking for excuses not to go to work. Like I'm just shot, like I have PTSD. And I was sitting in bed yesterday or the day before yesterday, like convincing myself that I had COVID so I wouldn't have to go anywhere. I could make up this great story and get a week off, right? And everybody would just have to believe it. And that would be that. And I was like, just get out of bed. And I love the building that I'm in. And I lived there 5 years. And I get up, and these apartments never come up for sale. And I open my door, and there's the realtor in front of my, in my building. And he's like, hey, 208's for sale. Are you interested? And, you know, today we signed on, you know, we're under contract for a new place for me to live. And emotionally, I don't know where I am in all this. I'm terrified. You know, I just did all this great stuff and I am literally terrified. And it's like, I made it to this subconscious place of a goal. And now I'm like, now what do I do? So, you know, I just keep coming to these meetings and listening to you guys and reaching out to my friends in AA. And when I get scared, I'm good about doing the 10th step and freeing myself of that and moving to the next thing and then to the next thing. And I'm really looking forward to, I mean, as tragic as this whole COVID has been and all the changes, it's been like the best year of my life. And I've really grown. I've learned this year that I can stand up and be a man. I'm coming up on 10 years of sobriety next month, God willing. And I felt like I felt like a third grader the whole time in this program. It feels like a little bit. And today, you know, Mickey for 9 years has been like, you got to stand up, you got to stand up, you got to engage. And finally, I felt like I did that. And now what? You know, the possibilities are endless in our fourth dimension, aren't they? And so thank you all for being here. And I just love this meeting and thanks. That's what I got.
Thank you, John. Good to hear from you, man. What about our friend Brenda Patterson?
EPA research.
Hi, I heard Larcene. I've heard you speak many times and I heard that you were going to be here tonight. So I said, I'm not going to miss it. You and I have so much in common. So I'm an alcoholic, but I'm also Al-Anon. And I too grew up in some pretty crazy stuff. And one thing I used to do when I was a little girl is I would take a wash rag and I would scrub underneath my eyes in the middle of the night. And I would scrub until it was bleeding. And then I would tie myself up. I'd pretend like I tied myself up. So I put my hands behind my back and I would cross my legs at the ankle. And then I would thrash around in my bed. And I was by myself, but I would thrash around in my bed and I would pretend like my dad was beating me up, which he did. But then I would pretend like these two women came to my bedroom door and they would walk over to the bed and they would untie me and they would wipe the blood off of my face and they would take care of me. So I would create that story so that I would be rescued. And I've been sober 42 years, and for 42 years off and on, I would do things like that. I wouldn't make myself bleed and I wouldn't tie myself up, but I would create these stories in my head where I was a victim and I didn't even know I was doing this. Even though my sponsor right there would tell me, I couldn't get it. I mean, I just wasn't there yet. But I would, you know, I've created these stories in my head. Well, the other day, I was driving down the interstate and there was a car that passed me, pulled out in front of me, not recklessly, he just pulled out in front of me. And I started with this story in my head. And I said, he's road rage, he's going to kill someone. And he wasn't, he was just driving. So in my head, I created this drama that I was going to call the police. And then I was going to pull into the police station and this guy was going to be chasing me and these police officers would rescue me. And about that time, I stopped myself and said, it might sound crazy to you guys. You may not understand what I'm saying, but I get it at a deep level. I said, you don't have to be rescued anymore. You know, you are okay today. Number one, there's nothing to be rescued from, but a bigger deal than that, I live by myself, so there's no one to, you know, I don't need to be rescued, but you don't need to create drama in your head to be rescued because you were rescued a long time ago. So meaning God. So I have God on board at a level today And I think that's what COVID has done for me. I'm grateful for COVID. I'm not grateful for COVID, but I'm grateful for it. The blessing that's come out of it is it's allowed me to spend more time in prayer and meditation than I've ever done in my sobriety. It's given me the opportunity to be quiet and to go inward. So I don't know, it's just a very exciting time right now of shifting and going deeper with this relationship with God. And I love that reading that Bill wrote, because it's cutting that faulty dependence on anyone, even made up people in my head. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it makes sense to me. So glad to be here, and thank you so much, Larcene. It was beautiful.
What about my man, Kurt? Kurt, you want to share? We had a good talk earlier today. This is one of the reasons I like opening this thing up is that I wanted to make it a spiritual workshop is so that we could have people from Al-Anon and introduce non-conference approved literature just as a, to talk about. Anyway, Kurt.
Well, hey, everybody, Kurt, alcoholic. Larcene, thanks. It's funny, you're only 5 miles away. I called Chris this morning. I said, I heard Larcene speaking tonight, so you better be on there. So I saw her on here. I giggle when I used to lose my truck all the time. It's funny because I didn't know where the hell it was. But God, I think I really was touched by Brenda's share. I have a thing I say a lot. It's I thank God I'm not suffering from what's not happening anymore. Most of my problems were constructs in my head, but they were real to me. That was reality to me. My reality existed between my ears, behind my eyes, and I think that the beauty of what you do with this meeting is, for lack of a better word, you go to a deeper end of the pool with this meeting. And I'm not saying that based on levels or anything like that. I don't want it to sound like that. It would be the more way Don kind of explained it to me is more degrees. And I was angry for 50 years. I was angry the first 19 years sober until I drank again. And I can tell you the reason today that I know I'm not angry is I was disconnected. That's why I was angry. I was separated, but I did not know I was separated until I was connected. That's when the clarity to know what was wrong became available. And I used to read this all the time and I didn't understand it. And it's in Chuck C's book. And he said, you only have one problem. That problem is conscious separation with God. And he said, when that problem is resolved, all other problems become situations. And when those problems now, which aren't problems, are situations, I can respond to them like what Mary had touched on earlier, rather than react to them. Now, every once in a while I get triggered, but the majority of the time, I'm not triggered, so I can respond. And I think that clarity doesn't come from emotions. It doesn't come from the physical sense. It doesn't come from thinking like what you read. That was a great reading. Lois, remember, I read that book not long ago. And I read it. The reason I read it was because when I went into Al-Anon about 4 years ago, I go to one meeting occasionally, and I read it to find out about Al-Anon. And what I got out of the book was I got more about AA from her talk. It was amazing because I'm sitting there, after I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is like, it gave more clarity. It shed light on everything, but it really shed light on AA for me. And when you read that last part, I thought that's exactly what they're talking about. This is the thing that triggered me with the reading. I read this every week when you read it, Sam, or Tom. You know, Tom's voice. I really enjoy Tom's voice. And this is what stood out this week. It was this. I saw where really the extra dividends of having love, offering love, and expressing love appropriate to each relation of life. And what stood out was, I said to Linda, I said, you know, they're not just talking about people. They're talking about that sense, like Mary was talking about with dolphins, or with Mother Earth, or with, there's this sense that gets awakened in us, that we know we're connected to this. We belong. There's not this existential crisis of unworthiness anymore. This thing starts to flower in us. And I don't, it's really hard to put language to this, because it's that whole thing of, you know, where they say we're supposed to maintain, it's in the 10th step, maintain the spiritual condition. And I love this because a buddy of mine says it this way. He says the best way to maintain this spiritual condition is to be the spiritual condition. It is to be an example of this thing and live from this place that we've awakened to. It's not theory anymore. It's, you said it a couple times, it's the integration of these steps into our lives. It becomes a part of who we are. And I think that's the real gift here. And that's the real gift of this meeting. I think you really have, you know, you've tapped into that, and I appreciate it. And thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you. Please raise your hand if you'd like to share. What about Dawn? Yeah, I picked on you.
Hi, I'm Dawn. I'm alcoholic. Thanks for picking on me, Sam. Thank you for sharing, Larcene, and everyone afterwards. I was listening to everything that you said, but talking about how to love your son unconditionally through the addiction. And I've had that experience, and how, you know, what I would go back and forth between just all in trying to fix my daughter and then having to completely just retract and withdraw from her because the pain was too painful. And I remember, you know, I wandered into a few Al-Anon meetings, and I remember the thing I kept hearing was unconditional love, and I can be happy whether the alcoholic is drinking or not. And it just was such a foreign idea to me. And I appreciate you for talking about how gaining freedom from that, because I have gained freedom from having to manage my kids so much. It's incredible how, as they become adults, I want more power, not less. It just doesn't seem to change. But one of the things that I was hearing was that ability to tap into, you know, what has become almost my tagline for this meeting, which is adult love. What does that mean? What is the adult love? I don't know. I don't know that much about it. But what I'm keyed into today is this says, plainly, I could not avail myself of God's love until I was able to offer it back to him by loving others as he would have me. And I couldn't possibly do that so long as I was victimized by false dependencies. And when it comes to other people, a lot of times maybe all the time, my false dependencies are wanting them to do what I want them to do in the way that I want them to do it. And if they would do it this way, I would be happy. And that makes it, you know, that condition, that contingency for me loving you is based on your behavior being what I want it to be. I'm screwed, because there's no way I can offer God's love, because God's love is unconditional. And the place that I'm trying to be is, you know, what I absolutely believe is possible is that I can live from my heart instead of my head. And that I have to actively pursue sense versus thought. I have to actively dig to find that place, because I have such an overdeveloped intellect that it almost snaps right into position to take over and run the show. And it excludes all possibility of me being able to give God's love. And I've been reading some Emmett Fox stuff. We're in the Lord's Prayer, and it's on the part where I am able to forgive as I forgive others. And that there is a verbed action there that says that I am in the process of forgiving, and that is how I am receiving. That I have to give first to receive. And that is, it's counterintuitive to me, so counterintuitive, but I believe that it is all possible for me, as it is for Bill, to live in that quiet place in the bright sunshine. And I believe that it's possible for me only through being able to center, live by heart, live by heart, live by heart, stay here, try to stay here instead of here. And I've heard wisdom that said, people say, I get the longest is from your head to your heart. For me, it's the other way around, heart to head, because I will never get from here to here. My head will always try to keep control in managing. So I have to say, excuse you, just, you know, cut off my head and set it aside. And then I might have a possibility of living in that unconditional place that she's talking about. And I will tell you that I don't have a lot of opportunity to hear my story when people talk about how they were reunited with their families and everybody got sober and lived happily ever after. I don't have that experience. My family of origin is not, they're just trashed. But my daughter, who I prayed for years and years and years, did not die. And just for today, she is sober. And I believe what a grace that I get a little bit of time with my terminally ill child. And thank you for that, for me being able to say, welcome home, without all the resentment and bitterness present. And AA gave that to me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. Tomas, sexy voice.
Thanks, Sam. Larcene, thank you so much. I think you know that I just absolutely love you, and you touch me very deeply every time you speak. In fact, I'll probably start crying. I'll just, you know, a little aviso, you know, a spoiler alert. But God, I think of you guys all the time. You know, we went back to, right before we left Santa Fe, we went to Santuario de Chimayo, where that dirt is from, and said prayers for you guys, you know, and think of you all the time, you know. And, you know, I think you're someone I can really hear. Like, there've been people along the way that I've really been able to hear. Clint Hodges was one of them, you know, where you just heard everything they said. And so your stories are kind of in my, you know, I've taken them in. And one of the funniest ones that I talk about all the time is where you said that Butch used to beg for the silent treatment. You know, that is such a hoot. I used to beg her to say something, you know, like hit me or scream at me or do something, you know, but it's like this deadly silence throughout the house, you know, kind of was her way of doing it. But
now he begs for the silent treatment.
Yeah, now I do. But so much of what you said, you know, hit me. You know, we've talked about this a lot. We go to a lot of conferences, as do you, and we noticed years ago that the AAs at these AA conferences wouldn't show up for the Al-Anon talk. Like, you know, and you've talked about that too, you know, like the Irish Wake. But it finally dawned on me that it wasn't because it was the 1 o'clock slot right after lunch. You know, that wasn't the only reason, because, you know, a lot of the conferences, they're not at 1 o'clock. But I think that the reason is that a lot of these alcoholics can't deal with what they did to their families. And the guilt that they feel when they hear these stories is more than they can bear. I really do. And when Juanita and I would do the step workshops that we would do, you know, years ago, and there'd be AAs and Al-Anons there, I'd always say, you know, we've got two missions here. And one is for the Al-Anon, for the family members to understand that we didn't do it at you. We did do it to you, but we weren't doing it at you. We couldn't do any better than what we did. And also for the alcoholics to kind of see what they put their families through and understand that, because I think it's really important. You know, I've said for years, you know, the 9 step promises that we won't regret the past or wish to close the door on it. And I do regret what my kids went through. I absolutely do. I regret what I did to them. You know, I called Don one time and I said, Don, I've just, you know, and I was sober quite a while. And I said, you know, I feel so ashamed of what I did to my children and didn't do for them. And I thought he'd say, oh, honey, it's, you know, that was then, you're not the same person. And that's not what he said. He said, that's good. He said, that's good. You should feel like that. He said, we're making progress because you're not a sociopath. That's what he told me. And you know, tying right into that, Juanita and I went to the movies, I don't know, 5 years ago, something like that, when the Glass Castle. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we were going to see a shoot 'em up, my kind of movie about people in Montana shooting each other. And it was full, and we had to go to this movie called The Glass Castle. And I went, oh, chick flick, you know, but okay, you know, I'll do it. And if you, I think everyone in Al-Anon and AA ought to see that movie, The Glass Castle. I mean, it's just haunting. And it's about, the woman wrote it about her, you know, growing up in an alcoholic hippie family, you know, like ours, you know. And I came out of that, and I literally ran out of the theater at the end of it and ran to the car, and Juanita came up to the car, and I started sobbing uncontrollably. I mean, and this is years and years into sobriety. And it just, all of this stuff just came out, and I just sobbed. And she said she thought I was mad because she'd made me go to a chick flick. And I said, no. I said, I wouldn't have done that to my worst enemy, you know, much less my children, who I love more than anything on earth. And you know, so it's a process in all of that, you know. And the other thing that got me, that, you know, you're talking about Carol, you know, and I think I've told you that she stayed at our house in Santa Fe when we had her speak there in 2003, and we had good times when we took her around Santa Fe and Charlotte and the old timers. And just recently, you know, Juanita was always in Al-Anon service, and she was delegate for New Mexico. And so I followed her through all of this. And so we met some real great people. And one of my heroes, who not everybody liked, but I absolutely loved her, was Arbutus O'Neill. And just recently, a guy brought me a VHS turned into a DVD of Arbutus and Bill O'Neill in 1984, talking about their lives. And you know, Arbutus always talked about the history of Al-Anon. And I just thought how blessed we were to have known those people, those giants, you know. And, you know, in my own journey, you know, meeting Mary Thayer when I was 3 years sober, and you know, the impact she had on me and has had on our family is just unbelievable, you know. And then Don, you know, for 8 years, and just my mentor, you know, and now Gary. And, you know, I was talking to Mary Thayer about this, you know, and just, you know, looking back, you see all this stuff, like Bazant says, he says, we live our lives forward, we understand them backwards. And Mary Thayer said, you know, there's a blueprint for all of this. And it's laid out, but we can't see it until after the house is built, you know, after the thing is done. And I just am so blessed, and was really blessed to hear you tonight. I love you, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Larcene, this evening. Hey, do you think before we closed out, you could read that passage from Lois Wilson again?
Sure, absolutely. Okay, and Kurt is absolutely right. Lois remembers there's a big old history of Alcoholics Anonymous, and then the last page, she pumps the Al-Anon thing into you. So it literally is on the last page. It's 194 through in Lois Remembers, and it says, "I used to believe thinking was the highest function of human beings. I now realize loving is our supreme function. The heart precedes the mind. Our minds demand an explanation, but our hearts do not need logic. They can love and forgive and accept that which the mind cannot comprehend. Hearts understand in ways minds cannot."
That was beautiful. So we'll, you know, and I didn't know that, Larcene, we have lots of Al-Anons on here, but I got more recommendations from all the people in AA for Larcene. I thought she was an AA, you know, at first, not that that mattered, but got to be one of the
I'd be an AA, but I can't get past the drinking part.
One of us love, yeah. And I think you spoke at the Music City Roundup a few years ago, and that's all anybody can talk about. Everybody's like, "Oh yeah, did you hear that speaker Larcene? You know that speaker Larcene? The drunks just love you."
I know. Well, they made me who I am. What can I say?
That's right. That's right. They really do, though. You know.
They get the credit.
Yeah.
My husband constantly reminds me I'd be nothing without him.
That's right. Well, thank you so much again for tonight, and we'll close this meeting. We just kind of do the mute button so it doesn't sound weird, and just inwardly go to our inner place and say the Lord's Prayer to ourselves. Take a few deep breaths and just quietly say it to ourselves. So for all who care to join me, we'll do that. Thank you very much. God bless. Love you guys.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Larcene.